Today I'm in Dresden, Germany, one of several German cities that was completely flattened by the Allied carpet bombing campaign. So, the concept of total war is going to increasingly define conflicts starting in the 19th and into the 20th century. The idea behind total war is that you utilize your entire population in one way or another to support the war effort. For example, you retool factories so that instead of producing consumer goods or construction goods, they produce armaments, guns, shells, bullets, things like that. Also, a disturbing aspect of total war is that the idea of non-combatants really becomes blurred. It opens up the door for violence, mass violence against civilian populations. Dresden serves as an example of what total war can do to a city. Right here is the Church of Our Lady, a Lutheran church that was completely destroyed during the Dresden bombing campaigns. You can see here the dark parts of the church are part of the original church that was left standing after the bombing, and the lighter colored bricks are what was replaced, what was rebuilt in 2005 when it was opened up for the public. And right next to me is the original dome that was uncovered in the rubble in 1995. At the beginning of 1945, Dresden was the last major German city to not be bombed during World War II. The Nazi high command felt that because Dresden was kind of the center for the arts, this widely considered this World Heritage city, that maybe the Allied high command would spare the city, would not bomb it. However, in February 1945, that all changed. The Allies finally decided to target Dresden because of its industrial capacity. Also because it served as sort of a gateway to the Eastern Front. This was kind of a staging area for German soldiers before they went and fought against the approaching Soviet army that was only actually about 55 miles away from Dresden when it was bombed. Lastly, the Allied High Command wanted to demonstrate the might of the combined American and British air forces when the Soviets eventually did approach the city and could see how thoroughly destroyed it was. Here's an RAF memo issued to airmen on the night of the attack, giving some reasoning for the raid. Dresden, the seventh largest city in Germany and not much smaller than Manchester, is also the largest unbombed built-up area the enemy has got. In the midst of winter, with refugees pouring westward and troops to be rested, roofs are at a premium, not only to give shelter to workers, refugees, and troops alike, but to house the administrative services displaced from other areas. At one time, well known for its china, Dresden has developed into an industrial city of first-class importance. The intentions of the attack are to hit the enemy where he will feel it most, behind an already partially collapsed front, to prevent the use of the city in the way of further advance, and incidentally to show the Russians when they arrive what Bomber Command can do. This last reason is notable because when the United States decides to drop the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, critics of this decision are going to accuse the United States of making this decision for that exact same rationale, that the United States wants to flex in the case of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, their atomic military muscles to their new enemy, the Soviet Union. The destruction of Dresden was quite thorough. The Allies used multiple different types of bombs during the operation. For instance, one was called a blockbuster bomb. It was a one-ton bomb that was meant to destroy an entire building in one explosion. The crater that it created was so deep that it would often rupture water mains beneath the building. And this was in preparation for the firebombing phase of the operation. Because many of the water lines were destroyed, people on the ground could not use that water to put out the fire that began to envelop the city. Reportedly, the fire was so large that it whipped up hurricane force winds because of all of the oxygen that was feeding the fire. Many people were sheltered in their basements when they heard the air raid sirens. And many of those people died from a lack of oxygen. They suffocated to death because all of that oxygen was going to the fire when the city was enveloped. The destruction of Dresden was and still is a source of anger for many Germans. It was reported that when Joseph Goebbels first heard about the destruction of this city, that he wept for several minutes, largely because it was a cultural hub for Germany. It was considered the Florence of the Elbe. Today, many white nationalists will use the destruction of this city and overinflated numbers, such as 500,000 deaths, to support this idea that there was an active genocide against the German people conducted by the Allied powers, and to kind of downplay the destruction, the killings of the German army and the Holocaust. In reality, this probably, if this were to happen today, this probably would be considered a war crime. But it was, unfortunately, standard operating procedure during World War II. Whenever either side, the Axis or the Allies, had access to strike at a civilian population, oftentimes they would. All told, about 25,000 people did perish during the Dresden bombing campaigns, no small number. In the decades following World War II, the city of Dresden was rebuilt. In many instances, like we saw in previous videos, the buildings were rebuilt almost exactly how they were previous to the war, in this Baroque-style architecture. But because East Germany was under communist rule, they also were largely influenced by Soviet-style architecture as well. Behind me is a socialist realist mural that celebrates workers. It celebrates communism as the political cause that all workers should rally around. Also, you have these very brutalist, very square, large apartment buildings that are found throughout the city as well, that kind of show this legacy of communism in the city of Dresden.